So that then finally leads us to the topic of estimating our stabilization parameters. And as we have different stabilization methods involved in our Gaussian equation right now, we'll also have to estimate different stabilization parameters. And I'll try to build this up slowly. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the SUPG stabilization again, and specifically the SUPG stabilization for linear basis functions. And we'll see that that actually simplifies a little bit. Afterwards, we'll talk about higher order basis functions. Then we'll do the pressure stabilized Petrov-Galerkin method, also for linear and higher order bases. And then I'll try to combine the two and show you how that would work. So first off, SUPG, and actually I'll again look at it from the perspective of our advection-diffusion model problem, because that's where we have used this and where we have a feel for what we expect our parameters to be. Now, how are we gonna choose these stabilization parameters? Well, we've talked about coercivity quite a bit before, and that's precisely also what our stabilization parameters are gonna involve. So we're gonna try and choose parameters tau in such a way that we retrieve coercivity of our advection-diffusion model problem in this case. And not only that, but we also want to have a coercivity constant that's going to be independent of our advective dominance. Yeah? So even if we have a highly advective dominant case, we still want to retrieve a moderate coercivity constant. Okay, so that means that we're going to try and estimate the coercivity constant of the normalized advection-diffusion equation. So the normalization parameter that I'll use is the L infinity norm of our advective field, and we're going to call that alpha. And the L infinity norm, well, that's just a nice way of saying the maximum value. Yeah, so you can interpret this as the maximum magnitude of our advective field A. Now recall that our bilinear form corresponding to this problem, where I'm normalizing first, would look like this, where we have our solution field phi and a test function v. That's an L2 inner product between our diffusivity kappa, now normalized by alpha. That's the gradient of phi, that's the gradient of v, plus our advective term, which was A, now normalized by alpha, dotted by the gradient of phi times the test function v. And after we've added SUPG, we would have another term, again normalized by the advective term, so we get tau SUPG divided by this alpha times our A dot gradient v, right? That's the operator acting on our test function. And then we would have, in the bilinear form, we would have only the terms involving phi, which are going to be A dot gradient v minus kappa times the Laplace operator on phi. And the thing that we will simplify right now is that if we have linear basis functions, then the second derivatives are going to be equal to 0, so we actually get rid of this term. Yeah? And then we have something that actually looks quite nice, because we simply have an L2 inner product of two terms that are really just the same thing, right? Oh, excuse me, this would be a phi right now. But you can see that that sort of forms a norm. So let's try and see what happens if we substitute the same function in both slots of our bilinear form. So that's what we would want to do if we want to prove a coercivity property. So then we have b times v comma v. And what we want to prove is that this is going to be larger than or equal to, well, the norm of phi in H1 times a constant, which we call our coercivity constant, so C, and that one's squared, right? So we want to prove that that is true. So what do we have if we simply substitute the same function in both slots of the bilinear form that we're dealing with here? Well, we would get b, v, comma, v. Well, the first term is already a normed quantity. So this is going to be the norm of kappa divided by alpha times the gradient of v, the norm thereof, squared. Okay, so that's not a problem that's going to hurt our coercivity, but our conclusion when we talked about the advection-diffusion equation and we tried to understand its unstable behavior was that precisely this term goes to 0 for alpha goes to infinity. So that was precisely the problem that we had. Okay, and now we're adding this SUPG term and trying to overcome this problem. Okay, so firstly though, what happened with this advective term? Well, it turned out that this advective term was actually not a problem at all. I will quickly sketch our argument. For the details, I would refer you back to the video on that topic. I think that was one of the first videos on the topic of the advection-diffusion equation. But the basic idea was that if we substitute the same slot in this integration, this integral, well, what do you get? You get, well, alpha inverse times a dot gradient v times v. Well, you can actually rewrite this as the gradient of v squared with a half up front. That's a chain rule. And now you can also apply the chain rule again. And you would get that this is going to be the same thing as half alpha minus 1 times the divergence of a v square. And now we would do the divergence theorem. You would get just an integral on the boundary now of our domain of a dot n times v square. Now I have to make an additional statement on the functions that we are actually considering. We're considering functions v, phi, and v in h1 0, where 0 meant that it has 0 boundary values, which means that this term is completely 0. Yeah, because of this is the v on the boundary, and that's going to be 0. So it turns out actually that our advective integral in our weak form does not show up in our coercivity estimate. Yeah? It's identically equal to 0. Under the assumption that the advective field is a divergence-free field. Yeah? That's the assumption that's implicit in this step. Now again, if you're interested in the details, then have a look at the video specifically on this topic. Okay, but the important part for the current video is that we do not get a contribution from the second term in the bilinear form here. So that means that we go straight to the SUPG term. Well, this is also sort of a normed quantity. We have tau SUPG divided by alpha times a dot gradient v squared. So from this, we want to motivate our decision on our choice of stability parameter, tau, and our motivation is going to be that the term that we're adding here is going to be a coercive term that's going to add coercivity, or that's going to bound our coercivity constant, also in the case of our advective field getting very large. So what else do we actually know about our stabilization parameter? Well, from our numerical experiments, we know that tau SUPG is going to be proportional to h. Yeah, so that if we get mesh refinement, then at some point we can actually represent the solution quite well on our fine mesh. We don't need to add any additional stabilization, so we want our stabilization parameter to vanish in that case. So what else can I say about how I expect my stabilization parameter to scale such that this additional term is going to be independent of our advective field? I'm making a mistake here, excuse me. These are going to be square roots. Yeah, because if you want to interpret this as a norm, then you would have to replace this by square root of kappa here and kappa divided by alpha square root over here, and then you would have the L2 inner product of this term. Okay. So let's take a look at this combination here. And then we'll find that if I double my advective velocity, what is going to be left over here? Well, we have a scaling inversely to well, the maximum value of A multiplied the square root of the maximum value of A multiplied by A. And so what I'll try to do is I'll replace this entire norm by some quantity here for which I want this A dot gradient v to be independent of the velocity magnitude. So I'll divide this by the magnitude of A. Well, naturally that means that I also have to multiply by the magnitude of A. Also square this such that we get one expression under the square root. We get tau SUPG times the magnitude of A square divided by alpha. So what happens if I double my advective velocity? Well, if I double my advective velocity, then the maximum value of my velocity is also going to double. So naturally alpha is also going to double here. And I don't want this factor to increase as I'm increasing my advective velocity. I want this factor to be independent of my velocity, because this one is independent of my velocity magnitude right now, right? We normalize this with respect to the advective velocity. So naturally that means here that I have to choose my tau SUPG to be also proportional to the magnitude of A inverse. So let me now propose a certain tau. The one that we'll actually choose, tau SUPG, is going to be equal to 2 times h, or was it h divided by 2? I think it was h divided by 2. Yeah. We're going to choose tau SUPG by h divided by the magnitude of A. 2 times the magnitude of A. So what does that give me for this additional term? Well, we have a normed quantity that looks like the square root of A divided by alpha times the square root of h divided by 2. Okay, and this is something that is not going to increase or decrease if I double my advective velocity, right? Because then both the upper part and the lower part here would double. So the ratio is going to remain the same. So this illustrates that SUPG with a parameter choice that scales as such as the choice that I'm making right here, would add a coercive term to our bilinear form that makes the coercivity constant sort of independent of the amount of advective dominance. And that's precisely the objective that we have. Okay, I think I'll stick to that with this video. This is going to be a successive number of videos that are relatively short, continuously building on top of each other in terms of complexity and more detail. Yeah, so we'll actually see that this is a choice right now that provides us the type of behavior that we expect, but there's not a limit yet. And that's because this is always a positive contribution. But we'll see that with a higher order term, there's also going to be a negative contribution, so we have a sort of a limit, and we'll get to that in the next video.